can't all do everything. You know, we can't all achieve everything that we could dream of. You know, so the richness comes from finding what you like doing and doing it and trying to do it without, I don't know, it sounds trite, but without causing any harm to anyone, and trying to make the world a slightly better place in some small way that you can.
That's a wonderful answer.
Welcome to Island Influencers, where we share stories of successful business owners, experienced professionals, entrepreneurs and community leaders based or with influence in the Isle of Man. This podcast is brought to you by Thornton Chartered Financial Planners, because great financial planning has the power to change your life. Now here's your host, Sharon Sutton.
My island influencer this week is Gyp Buggane, sound engineer, DJ and remixer, owner of Ballagroove recording studio. Our conversation revolves around music's profound impact on his upbringing, his pursuit of passions and his navigation of the creative industries. Growing up on the Isle of Man, music is deeply rooted in Gyp's family history. His love for music was nurtured from a young age, from his father's rock and roll performances in the 1960s tourist era to his grandfather's involvement in the Rushen Silver Band. In this episode, Gyp discusses the challenges and rewards of running a small business, emphasising the importance of passion, support and collaboration. He recounts his experiences recording local bands, navigating the financial aspects of his world, and the vital role of networking and community support in turning a hobby into a thriving business. Episode 116 is filled with a heartfelt appreciation for the vibrant and diverse music scene on the Isle of Man. Gyp's life story is a testament to the power of pursuing one's passions. He shares valuable insights on the need for self-care, the joy of living in a supportive community, and practical advice on reframing challenges as opportunities for growth. Enjoy. Dear listeners, welcome to this episode of Island Influencers, where I'm delighted to introduce Gyp Buggane to you. So, Gyp, I wonder, for the benefit of our listeners, would you be kind enough to tell us all about yourself and how we end up to be here recording at your fine studio in Balsane?
Okay, my name's Gyp Buggane. Well, that's my chosen name. I'm Manx origin, lived here all my life. I've always done music. My parents were into music, my grandparents were into music, so I've got sort of a long family history of involvement in music.
Can you say what your surname is?
Clegg.
Clegg, oh, you're a Clegg.
Yeah, indeed.
There you go.
Yeah,
I'm a Corlett originally.
Oh, well, there you go. Proper Manx names.
Yes.
So I've always done music as a hobby initially. Depends how biographical you want to be. I can go right back to the start if you wish.
Tell us all about what it was like growing up.
Okay, so it was a wonderful place to grow up. The Isle of Man. There was I lived in Port Erin. I grew up in Port Erin, so all the hotels in Port Erin would have lots of visitors every summer. So there's lots of music on around the place. As I say, my parents were big into music. My dad was into rock and roll, really predominantly, and he played in rock and roll bands all throughout the sort of late 50s and 60s and 70s.
Just locally, or did he go further afield?
Locally, and never, as far as I'm aware, never played off the island. I know BBC Ulster came and interviewed them at one time, because I've got a copy of the interview. So they played like 7 nights a week in hotels in Douglas, really, during the 60s, during the tourist era. So there was always musical instruments in the house. He always had a guitar, acoustic guitar, electric guitar and amps. My mum was a different side of music in that she was a music fan. She was into the early Beatles and Dylan, more art music, whereas my dad was more into sort of rock and roll music, more visceral stuff. The house was always full of music. There's always loads of records everywhere, and I listened to all their records avidly as a young person. Yeah. Loved it. 7-inch singles and then later albums. My granddad, on my dad's side, was one of the founder members of Serby Harmonica Band, which went on to become Rushen Silver Band. So he played harmonica, and he always had a harmonica with him. Everywhere he went, he'd, in the pub or wherever, he'd just get his harmonica out and start playing.
Well, yeah, why wouldn't you?
Why wouldn't you if you could? And he played it very well. And he played in the band all his life, as did my dad's brother and my dad, and then me. I joined the band as a young man, and loved that. Learned to play trumpet and learned to kind of sight read for trumpet and learned to read music and understand what it was to play music as part of a group of people. So it's not just you're just an element of the music, which I think was integral in what I ended up doing, recording music and listening to the whole rather than the individual pieces. So I think that was kind of a very important part of my musical history.
Yeah.
And my granddad on the other side, he was from Liverpool, and he was all about ballroom dancing, really. That was what he was into. He ran a ballroom, as far as I understand, he ran a ballroom dancing club. So he had loads of records everywhere for that. That wasn't my sort of music, but he was really into it.
Yeah.
And my granddad on my dad's side would record every concert, every Rushen Silver Band concert and the support acts. So there was cassettes everywhere and cassette recording equipment. So I would pick up the cassette recording equipment, and when I used to stay at their house, like, you know, if my mum and dad were going out and I'd go there and stay, I'd have the tape recorder in front of the radio with a little microphone.
Oh, didn't we all do that?
Exactly. Very much of my era, you know, like lots of people who became musicians and do what I do had this genesis to what they do. So yeah, I'd record the radio and then like do one tape to another tape to get the songs I liked from the top 40 or whatever, or record Top of the Pops on the TV. And that's how I kind of started recording music, I guess. Then after that, so then I'd be in school, played in the wind band at school, played trumpet with Paul Dunderdale, who went on to be a really influential character for me, because I didn't study music at school because it was still very classical based, and I didn't really have a classical music background at all at home. I wasn't really interested in classical music. It didn't really do it for me.
Yeah.
Changed later on in life, but at that time it didn't. And Paul Dunderdale introduced a sort of more contemporary music to the school. So when we were in the wind band, we'd be playing the Beatles and the Beach Boys and things like that, which was considered contemporary at the time for a school band. And then he built, and then some friends of mine, I helped a little bit, a recording studio at school, like a basic 4-track recording studio with some synthesizers and some audio recording gear, and like we like a small computer and all sorts of things, which were very kind of new for the time. This would be early to mid 80s.
Very forward thinking for a secondary school.
It was,
in the Isle of Man,
and it was kind of off-piste as well, because it wasn't part of the curriculum and it wasn't something you could do towards an O-level or an exam or anything, or GCSE I should say now, if they're still called that, I don't know.
Yeah, they are,
Yeah. So it was kind of just like an extracurricular activity, which I wholly embraced and spent an awful lot of time there. So I learnt the basics of recording there. Then I got a 4-track recorder at home, and then I got an 8-track recorder at home, and I started writing music and recording my own music, recording my friends' music, playing in bands from sort of late school days. And then when I left school, playing in bands in the pubs, playing in punk bands and indie bands. Then what did happen after that? Then I kind of worked for a few years. Then I moved to Liverpool to go to university.
That's a bit late, that, isn't it? So you got a job from out of school, as well as playing in bands. You had to go and get a paying job.
Absolutely. Yes, yeah, there was no money in bands. You didn't get paid in those days for playing.
I'm still not sure there is very much.
It's kind of gone back to that now. But so no, I worked for a few years, saved a few pound up. Liked having money in my pocket because I'd grown up, as I said, in Port Erin, where there was a culture of going out because of all the tourists and all the entertainment that was on. And I enjoyed that. So I liked going out with my mates. And so I liked having a few quid in my pocket. So I got a job rather than going to university. I probably wouldn't have got into university anyway, but I didn't take that route.
Right.
So I did that for 3 years, something like that, 4 years. And then I decided that wasn't for me. And a friend of mine, his parents had bought like a little house in a village in France. And he said, how'd you fancy coming to France to paint this house with me? And I went, you know what, I really do fancy that. I need to stop what I'm doing and do something else because it's not working for me. It was nice having a job and all that, but it just wasn't. I wasn't on the right trajectory. So I did that, and while I was there, I was thinking what I was going to do, and I thought, well, you know what, I would really like to go to university. So I applied to go to Liverpool University and got in as a sort of overseas student, a mature student.
And did you have to fund that yourself, or there was some assistance from government?
The government funded it in those days.
Amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I had to fund. They paid the course, from what I remember, they paid the course fees, but I had to pay for my accommodation and stuff. But I worked every holiday and every break from university. I came back to the island and worked in the job I'd had previously. I was still able to come back and work. So I kind of funded it, a bit of it myself.
Super.
Funded the lifestyle anyway. And then while I was at university, carried on recording because I had my 4-track over there with me and writing a lot of stuff. And when I came back, I played in a band here, which was great fun.
But what did you get in university?
What did I study?
Yeah.
Computer science and philosophy.
That's an interesting combination.
It is. It certainly was then. It was that they were very disparate in those days. There wasn't, like, people didn't really understand why you'd study both of them. I think now, with advances in computing, there's big philosophical questions about where computing has gone and where it's heading in the future. So I think now it makes more sense, whereas in those days I kind of saw them as separate things.
Yeah, indeed. I was just, I read it and I thought, wow.
Yeah, I mean,
with AI coming along, surely you must be the Isle of Man's central expert on the coming impact of AI.
No. I'm a ranter, and I'm obsessed with it and very interested in it.
From an informed standpoint, one would hope.
Yeah, I mean, I have a bit of knowledge about it, and I'm very interested in it, but there's certainly people who are way more knowledgeable than me, who I get in touch with when I've got questions about AI. Right. Hi, Aaron. He'll know exactly who I mean. So philosophy was an interest. I was just interested in philosophy, and I was able to do that with the computer science. They said that was a great idea. So, and then my dissertation was in between the two disciplines, which was unusual, but I really enjoyed it, and I really, really enjoyed university. It wasn't hard. Well, it was hard work, but it wasn't something I was forcing myself to do. It was a joy to go there and study, to be honest with you, because I was that few years older and I really wanted to do it. So I did that, got my degree and what have you, and decided to move back to the island with my partner and got a job.
A real job?
A real job.
Gosh.
In computers, as a computer programmer initially, and then over time, I ended up doing like project management, managing big IT projects, which was great in some respects. I liked the challenge. I liked the technology. I didn't like the office world and the office life. It just wasn't for me. It was a means to an end. Nothing more.
And I don't suppose remote working was such a thing then?
It wasn't. No, it wasn't even really a thing at all. No. You couldn't work from home or anything like that. So the office life didn't really suit me. But, I knuckled down and worked hard. And I did all right. And then, this is a real potted history, isn't it? So, and then I did that for 16 years, 17 years, something like that. And then I got to an impasse in my life where I went, I'm just not doing this anymore. I don't want to do this. I really don't want to do this.
Well, if you built up enough behind you to be able to make that decision. Then.
Yeah, I mean, I'd saved a bit and, we'd bought a house. And at that point, it was like, I don't have to do this anymore. I could do something else. Yeah. Obviously I'd still have to earn money to pay for food and what have you, but...
That's cool. It's brave.
Brave, foolhardy, I don't know. At the time, it wasn't a difficult decision. I really needed to get out of that world. I just didn't want to be in it anymore.
Sure.
And it wasn't fulfilling, and I was just like, 40, I guess. And I was just going, I just don't want to do this with my life. This isn't what I want to be doing. So I decided to leave, handed my notice in, and then left. And then 2 months after I left, we found out we were having our first kid. So that was a shock. And it was, I didn't have a job, didn't have an income, was kind of living off what savings I had. But people had been asking me, and people had been saying, will you come and record us? I'd been doing a lot of that. Yeah. I've missed out the whole thing about running a record label and all sorts of stuff, all sorts of recordings we did with that record label that happened, before I left work from the sort of early 90s.
And that was Isle of Man.
That was Isle of Man, yes.
An Isle of Man label.
Yes, that was Ballagroove Records. We did about 40 releases, I think, over the course of about 15 years, and put on a lot of nights, like DJ nights and band nights and stuff, which was brilliant. And that kept me.
And that was part paid, I guess.
No, there was no money in that. If
okay.
anything, we lost money on everything we did. But it didn't. That wasn't.
It didn't wash its face quite.
Yeah, it was okay to lose money on that. That was
passion,
was the hobby and a passion, And it was what all the nights we ever put on for free.
Yeah.
Because that's what we enjoyed doing.
Yeah.
It was what kept us sane while we were in our jobs.
Okay, so passion project on the side, no job, expecting a baby. What did you do?
Yeah, so then left work, and I was in this situation, and people were asking me, and people were saying, well, record bands, that's what you're good at. Mm-hmm. That's what you like doing. And I kind of hadn't considered it as a career. I thought that's something I can do on the side, but I'm going to need to get a job. And it was like, well, what can I do? And I thought, well, I can do computers, but I don't want to do that. And I just kind of went, well, maybe this is what I should do. This is the path I should follow. So I did. And I was lucky. A few bands I knew were about to record albums, so I did albums with them, and they turned out well. And I enjoyed the process, and I had just about enough equipment to do it.
Can you mention any particularly that you were really proud of at the time?
Well, the first ones I did were Fletcher Christian Mutiny,
right.
Who were like a hard rocking, just great band from Port Erin, who their gigs were superb, chaos, and I loved them, really loved the band. So to get to record them was a joy. And we did a good job on it, I think, and it came out well, and everyone liked it. And Mr. Eliminator and the Deadly Vipers, which was Dolan. He went on to form Mad Daddy, a current band that people may know. His original band, who were like this surf rock band. They were all like 16 or 17. They kind of came from nowhere. And it was like, how come there's a bunch of 16-year-olds playing surf rock in Port Erin? It was most unexpected, but I absolutely love music like that. So
yeah, it's interesting, their backstory too, isn't it?
Yeah, because it's from their parents, I think, and how they came about that music. But they were really good at it, and they were really exciting gigs, and we'd put them on quite a few times with Ballagroove nights and stuff, and they'd become friends. So I recorded them, and that went well as well. And then it just kind of branched out from there. And I kind of realised that people, it sounds callous, but people would pay me to do it. And at that point, I needed to make money from doing it, because I needed a job. And it was like, and I thought, well, this is what I want to do. And then a guy was working here in this studio, in this building, Simon Campbell, and I'd become friends with him just through general interest in music.
And did he fit it out as a studio, or is that something that you've done?
He was kind of using it as a rehearsal space for his band, right. And stuff he was doing.
So next door's studio is soundproofed, is it?
Kind of.
Oh, it doesn't matter really, is it?
Yeah.
You're in the middle of an industrial estate. Yeah. No one's going to complain about the noise,
exactly,
are they? With EasyJet taking off now and then. Does it? If EasyJet does take off, though, I mean.
Yeah, sometimes you have to pause recording. But
okay.
It's never a big problem.
There's a few of them around at the minute.
Yeah, or leave it in if someone wants a plain sound in their recording. So he was using this studio, and then he was looking to record a record with someone, and I can't exactly remember how I got involved, but I ended up coming in and doing the engineering on it. I think he wanted to play his guitar, and he just wanted someone else to do the engineering. So I had to learn Pro Tools really, really quickly, and I worked on that project with him, and it went well. But then he was leaving the island, and that really put the cat amongst the pigeons, because I realised that the equipment I'd been using to record bands, like the good quality equipment, was his. It wasn't mine.
And it costs a fortune to buy it yourself, I guess.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I was going to lose all that equipment, so effectively I had my income cut off instantly. So I decided, with what savings I could afford to spend, to get some really good speakers and a good desk and a good computer. And it was the first time I'd ever really kind of invested in it and gone, right, I'm going to spend a bit of money and I am going to make this work. And then I took the studio on, took the rent on, and kitted it out and made it my own. It's gone through various changes over the years, but it's kind of...
You've got a lot of memorabilia here, I will say. Yeah.
It's gone through, I mean, that's another story, really, the changes it's gone through. But it was the first time I made it my own. And then I started getting bands in. And then I realised that other people would come to me who I didn't know once I started advertising, and word of mouth got out. And then all of a sudden it was like, God, I thought there was a lot of musicians on this island, but I had no idea just how many.
Yes.
And then people...
I've had to scroll through your website before, obviously stalking you for the podcast recording. But yes, I mean, before we started to record today, we were talking about just the numbers of bands, and you've recorded so many of them, and many I haven't heard of, and quite a few I have. It's just phenomenal, the level of quality of local music that there is, in all kind of genres, really.
Absolutely. The quality is very high. It's very broad. There's everything. I mean, I've recorded now. I went into this thinking I would just record, guitar bands and bands playing music that I would choose to listen to myself. And then I realised pretty quickly that wasn't going to be the case. General wisdom says you should niche down in business, and you should, go for one particular thing and do that really well. But on the Isle of Man,
it's difficult, isn't it?
You can't really do that. You can't do that with music. You've got to be broad, because you've got punk bands, you've got, disco bands, you've got choirs, you've got brass bands, you've got people harpists. Folk music is a big thing here.
Yes.
And it really broadened my horizons as well. I think I was quite close-minded about music when 20 years ago.
I think you are when you're younger, though, aren't you?
I think it's part of growing up.
Yeah.
And it's part of your identity. And there was the genre of music you liked in those days defined kind of who you were and who you hung around with. So it was quite important to be precious about it. But I think when you get older, you just stop caring about stuff like that. And now I realise I like music, and I like working with musicians, and I don't mind what music they play. And 99.9% of cases, I end up liking the music they like, because I show an interest in it. And if you're working with someone for 3 weeks on, I don't know, some style of music, I'll listen to that style of music. I'll listen to the artists who play that style of music and get to know the genre if I don't already know it. And then you end up liking it if you immerse yourself in it.
That's safe.
And that's part of a producer's job. That's part of, you've got to know the music you're doing. You've got to understand what makes that music work if you're going to produce something worthwhile. So the island is very broad in its styles of music, and I've learned the techniques for recording. Hopefully I've learned all the techniques for recording all the different styles of music, and
that's invaluable.
It's what you've got to do.
Yeah,
it's what I had to do. So I couldn't have survived if I just recorded guitar bands, or just done dance music. Or hip hop. I couldn't, you couldn't do just one of those things. You could as a hobbyist, and you could get really good at it, but you wouldn't make a living from it.
No. Well, great! I'm delighted you are. It's a wonderful facility, and any local artist who hasn't been down for a look should definitely come down and
everyone's welcome.
Scope you out. Yeah,
indeed.
Super duper. Well, if it's okay, I'd like to to move on to the questions I ask guests.
Absolutely.
If that's all right. And my day job isn't podcasting, it's financial planning. So I always ask people, for you, what your earliest memories of money were, and, what was money like growing up?
Okay. Money wasn't significant. It wasn't something that was talked about. No one kind of... I don't remember knowing or even recognising that some people had more money than other people. In the village I grew up in, it wasn't. So, I mean, you knew some people were wealthy, I guess, but everyone else wasn't.
Yeah.
So it was like we were all in the same boat, really.
We were in the wasn't as well.
Yeah. I mean, I grew up in a council house. My dad was an electrician. My mum was a dinner lady.
Yeah.
We weren't poor, or what I would consider poor, but we didn't have loads of money,
Sure.
So, but my mum and dad never really, I don't remember them ever complaining about not having money.
No,
no. They just got on with it.
And what about you? Do you remember having pocket money, or as you mentioned, you went and got jobs and stuff? Was that your first sort of?
I don't remember ever wanting for anything, but then I don't remember. We didn't go on foreign holidays or anything like that. Things that would be considered kind of normal nowadays. We go to Liverpool to visit my grandparents. But there was always food on the table. We weren't lacking in anything we needed.
No.
And yeah, I mean, I started my first job, I think, was working on Isle of Man Railways. I worked in the ticket office with the lovely Mike Buttle, who I might just say, get well soon, Mike, because he's not well at the moment.
Aww.
But he's a lovely man, and I really enjoyed working with him in the ticket office. And then I worked painting the Peveril Hotel on Port Erin Prom and doing gardens for that family.
How high up did you go when you were painting?
Too high up. Oh. Yeah, it's a bit scary.
Well, I'm glad you made it.
Yeah, actually, there is a story about that does relate to money, and one of the first times that I kind of started thinking about money, because I was really obsessed with a band called Joy Division.
You too?
Badly, not you too, no.
No, you as well.
Joy Division, yeah, I was badly obsessed with them.
Yes.
And I can remember cutting the grass in front of the Peveril Hotel, and me being a mathematically minded person, I was working out, each time I went up and down the garden, how many times I'd have to go up and down the garden to buy a bootleg record by Joy Division to hear one new song. So I would work out in my head, and I'd go, if I go up and down 47 times, I'll get to hear one new Joy Division song, because that'll pay towards a bootleg. So I suppose that's one of the first times I equated money with getting things.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Yeah,
I would have
been,
I don't know, I would have been 14, 15 at this time, I guess.
Yeah, interesting.
So, as I say, we never wanted for anything. I was fine growing up. We weren't wealthy at all. We were just sort of normal working class people. But, so as my mum and dad provided, great. But we never I don't think people looked to money to solve problems in those days. It wasn't really a thing. You didn't go, I've got to go out and get rich. It would people just didn't think like that, And I don't think the pressures were on, certainly not like they are for young people now, where it's you've got to have a good job or you're going to really struggle in life because times are hard. Times weren't that hard then. They were different. Pre-finance sector. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Before all of that happened, I mean, they'd had the 70s building boom, which had changed the island, and some people have made a lot of money on that. But most people were still just working week to week.
Most people hadn't. Yeah,
and we're happy. People were fine. I think. My mum and dad might have a different story. It might have been actually different.
We were kids,
them.
Right? So
and they protected me from it. Probably.
That's good. That's good. Well, so a little bit further to just to go down that route a little more. If you could just define what being rich or wealthy means. What do those words mean to you?
They don't mean money. To be rich to me is to have an interesting life and be fulfilled and, have things to do that you enjoy doing and sharing time with people and doing stuff that you think is worthwhile. We can't all do everything. We can't all achieve everything that we could dream of. So the richness comes from finding what you like doing and doing it and trying to do it without, I don't know, it sounds trite, but without causing any harm to anyone and trying to make the world a slightly better place in some small way that you can.
That's a wonderful answer.
I think that's
not trite at all.
That's what richness and wealth means to me. I mean, obviously, from a financial perspective, you've got to have enough money to put food on the table, and you've got to have a little bit of... It's nice to have a little bit of security. I would consider wealth to be having a bit of security. Yeah. Beyond that, I don't think it's the be-all and end-all. I know people with plenty of money who are very unhappy, and I know people with no money who are really happy. Yeah. So I've kind of known people on both sides, and I can see that there's no correlation between how much money you've got and how happy you are. There's other things that are way more important. Yeah, sure. But, I am driven to earn a living doing this because I want to have food on the table. I want to be able to go out every now and again and, I want my family to be provided for. But I'm not trying to write number one hit singles and compromising everything I do and, in order to earn more money just for the sake of it. No, that's good. It's a good answer. That's a good answer. And of all the things you've done throughout your life so far, what's given you the most fulfillment? professionally or personally?
Well, you can do both if you like. You know, people normally save their kids for
personally, yeah. I mean, being with my partner for 32, 33 years, having our first kid, seeing her growing up. The most fulfillment comes from living in a place you love and being surrounded by lots of people who you get on really well with, and being content. I think, you know, that's I think on a personal level, without going into too much really personal stuff. I think that's
perfect.
Covers it.
It does.
From a professional level, I think. I mean, there's specific things like, you know, gigs I've done and people I've met and places I've been and stuff like that have been really hugely satisfying. But I think ultimately the most satisfying thing is that I'm sat here now doing this, you know, and I do this each day and I walk into the studio knowing that I'm going to be doing music with people. If I'm not doing maintenance or cleaning or doing all the other stuff that goes with running a small business, you know, that each week I'll be making some good music with some nice people.
So you want to come in every day?
I do, yeah. Well, no, I like having a day off, don't get me wrong, you know, but but I don't mind coming in. That's great. Yeah, that's absolutely true. If I'm working that day, I'm happy enough to come to work, yeah, absolutely. It's never a chore.
Perfect. Thank you. And so as a small business owner then, what would be your number one tip to any aspiring small business owner, entrepreneur? Let's face it, you are an entrepreneur as well as a small business owner.
Yes. It's funny because I don't think of myself that way. No. It's not the person I think I am. I think I'm just someone who loves music and does music. You know, that's how I think of it. But we were talking about a mutual friend, Fiona Fitzpatrick.
Yes, and a previous podcast guest.
Yeah, from Brand Growth Heroes, who you did the podcast with, and that's how we ended up in touch.
Yes. Thanks, Fiona.
Yeah, thanks, Fiona. So Fiona spoke to me. Most of my friends aren't really business-minded. You know, I wasn't. I'm still not really. You know, most of us just had a job, you know. So I didn't really know many small business owners. I'd done... There was a thing on the island called the Creative Industries Group, where loads and loads of creative people got together at Noor Bakehouse every Thursday night or something years ago. And through that, I started to meet other people who were pursuing their hobbies and turning them into jobs. I already had. So people asked me quite a lot about that, about how I'd managed to turn it into a job. And I was not giving advice, but telling them of my experience, which I guess is advice, about how I'd done it. And then I started to realise there was a group of people I knew who had started or were starting small businesses. There was like a growth of that on the Isle of Man. This would be 10 years ago or something, I guess. Yeah. As these kind of new bars started opening, eateries and things like this, and artists actually selling stuff on Etsy and managing to earn a living by doing it. So I suppose I still didn't feel part of that. I felt like an outsider on the business side of things. I didn't feel like I was motivated as a business person in any way. But then I met Fiona through her partner, Juan, who's a good friend of mine. And she was asking me about what I did and what have you, and I told her about what I did. And she said, "Oh, that's great. I'll have to come down and have a look." And she came to the studio. And because she's quite business-minded, you know, she drives growth in business. She started asking me questions that I'd never been asked before, because she said, one question that really stuck with me was, she said, "Who's the managing director of Ballagroove?" And I went, I don't have one. And she kind of looked at me and laughed and went, "It's you." And I went, ooh, I'd never thought of it like that before. And it really made me think, and I thought, oh yeah, I am actually wholly responsible for this. I thought all I had to do was be a good sound engineer, and at that time I wasn't so much a producer. I don't think I was more just a sound engineer, and I thought that was enough. As long as I was a good sound engineer, the business would look after itself. And that made me realise that there's more to it. When she said that, I thought, no, I've actually got to step up my game a bit. And she was asking about how much I was making on the studio, and because she was a friend, I was okay talking about it. And she said, no, you need to be earning a bit more than that. You need to step it up a little. and be more public and advertise more and get more people in, and because she was saying that's not sustainable long term.
Sure.
And I wasn't thinking long term. I wasn't thinking beyond the next project, So she did make me think a little bit different about it. It didn't make me go all businessy, but it did make me think, if I'm going to do this for a living and I want to protect this as my way of life, I've got to actually take it a little bit more, not more seriously, but I've got to think about the business side of it and actually think of myself as controlling the business side of it.
For sure. It's a really difficult balance, isn't it? Because, otherwise you end up, you can, in some respects, depending on what you're doing, I think in any sort of fee-based business, you can end up charging for incompetence, but giving away expertise for free. And it's finding that balance.
Finding that self-worth, that you're happy to charge people, because as well, a lot of my job is working with friends.
Yeah.
Because I've been involved in the music scene over here since year dot, and so a lot of the people I was asking for money for projects were people I knew well, and that's still uncomfortable. I still find that hard.
No one enjoys it.
No, I guess, yeah, absolutely. Unless you're in unless you have a detachment from your customer and you're just providing a product, I think then maybe you see it differently. Whereas
it's that emotional money thing.
Yes.
We're all supposed to have natural instincts with it, but it's man-made, so we don't.
Yeah, it's an illusion. It's like if I could get paid in food, records, time, and having a trip off the island a couple of times a year, I would happily just not have the money. It doesn't mean anything to me in and of itself.
Yeah.
It's just I'd happily barter, but you can't in the modern world. It's not actually practical to do that. So I started to kind of take on the role of running the business, and I did some marketing courses, and I was always doing my accounts well because I'd kind of come from the computer background, so I was happy enough with spreadsheets and stuff like that, and numbers. I've always been okay with that, and I've always looked after that side of things, so that was okay. But I wasn't really doing projections, and I wasn't looking and going, where will I be in 5 years' time, 10 years' time, 15? And I still don't. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in this year, really, and nothing beyond. In terms of financial projections, I don't know, I just want to have work, and as long as I can keep the work coming in, I kind of have faith. Blind faith,
sure.
Maybe,
well, it sounds to me
I'll
like
be okay.
You're lining up project after project after project.
Yeah.
So what did she say particularly? The managing director.
I think that was the thing that really turned my view as instead of I was kind of earning money as a hobbyist and earning enough money to get by as a hobbyist, to go in, no, it actually is a business, and I need to put Ballagroove out there as not as a brand as such, but I need to put my name out there and stop hiding behind, literally hiding behind the desk. I need to kind of go out there a little bit more and embrace that side of things. And it's actually been all right. And the weird thing was, I didn't think I'd find it comfortable, but I listened to this. There's a podcast called Brian Hood, who talks a lot about this, and it's specifically, his original podcast was called The Six Figure Studio, and it was about recording studios. It's now broader and it embraces the entire creative industries. But he talks a lot about how people who, like me, who are sound engineers, musicians, creative people, aren't really cut out for business unless you can think of business as being a creative pursuit. So if you're able to think of your marketing as being creative, so you put creative energy into your marketing, then it's fine. It doesn't feel like marketing. So in the way I market the business, I just do social media, and I just do the same photograph repeated with different people in it. But I like that photograph and people like it. And I found that works. And I feel so I've still got creative control over it. I'm not having to do something I don't want to do, if that makes sense. I don't really want to market because I'm not pushy in that way, but I feel comfortable taking photos of people who come to the studio and going, this person's been in and they're great, because they are, and I want to sing and dance about.
Yeah, well, I'm going to turn the tables on you shortly and take a photograph of you in the studio.
That's okay. I've kind of come to terms with that I have to do that a bit. Right, where was I? So
yeah, your number one business tip, really, run it like a business.
Well, yeah, do something you love, and if you're going to do it as a business, you do have to. You do have to do certain things. You know, you've got to have accounts. You've got to. You've got to keep on top of things. And I don't really want to bring up COVID, but it's important in that was a massive problem for me, and I wasn't prepared for it in any way, shape or form, as most people weren't, you know.
No, they were not.
Maybe people who'd been in business for a long time, who'd seen the ebb and flow of business, were used to some pits in the business, but, I mean, I literally had my business stop overnight.
Yeah, I know, you had a really tough time, didn't you? You had to get politicians involved and all sorts.
Yeah, it was really hard, and I nearly lost everything. I say lost everything, and I nearly lost my business. You know, lost the studio and lost all of that, and it was really hard to get it back up and running because, like, we'd come out of lockdown, and I'd have to spend a lot of time going round all my clients and going, like, who's ready to do a project? And of course, no one was thinking about A, spending money because everyone had lost money over COVID, and B, no one was going out and playing because the confidence wasn't there to go out into public and play in the pubs. Pubs weren't busy.
Nobody was going into pubs.
Yeah, exactly. So the whole ecosystem that I'm part of wasn't functioning. So even when we came out of lockdown, it spent a lot of time like getting a full programme back together of bookings, and then we'd go into lockdown again. And I'd lose it all again. All the time I'd spent was just completely wasted. And this happened like 3 times, I think. And it took a lot of resolve to get through that.
Well done on getting through it and surviving it, Gyp. Yeah. I mean, what did you learn from then that you would do differently now, do you think?
I could say that you should put some money aside for unforeseen circumstances, I think. But you know, you can't really foresee something like COVID happening. You can't really prepare for that. You know, it just, hopefully that was just a one-off.
Or at least the handling of it.
Yeah, I mean, it could have been handled differently, but I don't want to get political about it. No. You know, I don't think small businesses were very well looked after during that time. And we did have, I must thank Claire Christian, because she really helped. You know, she really took up, because she was running a small business herself, but she really took on the role of helping people in my position. And I didn't know her, I'd never met her before, but every message I sent, she replied to, and she seemed to basically have our corner. So I'm eternally grateful to her for that, because it helped me get through it all.
Yeah.
So yeah, in terms of business advice, I suppose I would say do something you love. If you've got a passion, find a way to do it. And if you're passionate about it and at least it's feasible to turn into a business, do it. Because I didn't think this was feasible. I didn't think I'd be sat here 12 years later, still with, you know, earning what I need to earn each week and working with new people all the time. I didn't think that was possible. It hadn't been, as far as I'm aware, it hadn't been done before, like a full-time studio on the island.
24/7.
24/7, yeah, always available.
Yes. Well, it's fantastic. And, you know, on behalf of, I mean, I'm not very much of a musician these days, but on the behalf of every musician, recording artist on the Isle of Man, you know, thanks for doing it, because it's such an incredible facility.
Oh, that's very kind of you. Yeah, well, I mean, it's easy for me because I love doing it. It's what I want to do, you know. And I've known people. I mean, another friend, Ian Riv, who was enormously helpful to me when I was setting the studio up, with technical knowledge and encouragement, and encourages me every day. We kind of speak regularly because he runs a studio down in Brighton, and he was able to give me a lot of training and give me a lot of encouragement and say that you can do this, you know, you will do this, you've got a skill for it, pursue it, you know. So I think I suppose going back to the business advice, I think do something you love, somehow hope that you're lucky enough to have some people around you who are going to encourage you and give you some advice. Don't try and do it on your own. Go out and look for help, because there is help. You know, whether that be, you know, in marketing or or any aspect of the business. There will be people out there who can help, and there's other small businesses around the island. Look at the other small businesses that you like. If you're a small business supporter, the bars you like going to, or the cafes you like going to, or the small businesses you use to do whatever services, and speak to them and ask them questions. Because it's not a competitive island, really, I don't think. Most small businesses will talk to each other and help each other. Going back to that creative industries meetings we used to have, what I found was whether I was talking to someone who did music, or someone who made jewellery, or someone who painted, or someone who did XYZ, or ran a cafe, we all had more in common than we had different. The only thing that was different was the actual product we were selling, but we were all coming up against the same problems and the same issues, and finding different ways to solve them, so we could all share that information, and we weren't treading on anyone's toes, because we were all trying to get this sort of ecosystem on the island going, and like making the island a bit more interesting. Yeah, there was kind of a drive to do that. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's my business advice.
Great.
A bit all over the place.
Good. But no, not at all. Running a small business can be all over the place.
It kind of is. Yeah. It's not straightforward. No.
So what could you, if you could go back and give your 18-year-old self some advice, what would it be? Hold on to that scaffolding.
Yeah, be careful. I think don't get washed up, drawn up into doing something you don't want to do with your life. It's like, think about what you want to do and make that your number one priority. Yeah. Not like think that doing a job where you get paid more will make you happier, or that those things you'll get with the money will make you happier, because it might not. It might. Some people it works for. Some people go out and earn loads, and it makes them really happy, and that's cool. That's no problem. But it won't necessarily. It's not a a one-to-one correlation that earning more money and doing a job you hate just to get money will make you happy, because it won't. It'll burn you out.
Wise advice. I think your 18-year-old self would listen to you on that.
I probably wouldn't have done if you'd met my 18-year-old self, but,
Oh, dear. So what do you do to relax? What do you do to keep your life in balance now, Gyp?
Well, I guess I'm lucky because I'm quite relaxed in my work. Yeah. If I'm surrounded by people making music, even though it's hard work and I work really hard at it, it's still relaxing. It's a happy place. It's like you're in a flow state when you're working. So
yeah, cathartic. Is that what it's called?
It is cathartic. Yeah. And when you're making a song and it's getting better at each step, it's rewarding. Yeah. So that in itself is relaxing. But outside of my job, I don't really do music outside of my job. I listen to records. Clearly, I love listening to records, watching music documentaries. We have an allotment. I should spend more time there. The time I do spend there, I really love.
Well, now's the time. It's May.
Absolutely. If the weather treats us a bit better, but
yeah, sure.
I do really enjoy going up there, and I just enjoy doing normal stuff. I like, going for a walk. I like swimming. I love swimming.
Open water or?
No, in the pool.
Yeah.
I'm not very good at open water. I feel the cold.
Yeah,
I don't know why. But
it's like jellyfish either.
Yeah. I will swim in the sea in the middle of the summer, and I really enjoy it. Yeah. And I like socialising. I like hanging around with my friends.
Lovely.
And family.
And what about your favourite trip you've ever taken?
With business or pleasure? Well, the two are intermingled.
Yeah, they are.
With my partner, going to India was pretty mind-blowing. We went to India a few times. That was,
all over, or a specific part?
South India.
South India,
yeah,
Goa.
So we went to Goa once. We were further south, Kerala and Tamil Nadu. And I really, really loved it in India. Sounds odd, but felt very at home in India. Felt very comfortable. Very relaxed. Loved it. Just loved everything about it. It was just a fantastic experience.
Would you go back?
I'd have to get a passport.
Well, that would help.
Yeah. Would I go back? Well, if I was to go back now, we'd have to bring our daughter. Would I bring my daughter to India? I don't know. I'm probably too nervous. at my age now to do that. I would love to. But I don't know if I could. Maybe I will. I don't know if time comes.
Okay.
So that was my family thing. With music, I was lucky enough to stumble across a set of circumstances which led me to go and perform at some festivals. So I got to go to America with that and Norway, and they were brilliant experiences. They were the greatest experiences I ever had doing music. Really,
yeah. I'd like to talk about that some more, but
okay.
I'll have to say that for another day.
Absolutely.
And what do you think are the best things about living in the Isle of Man?
The best thing about living in the Isle of Man, I think, is the fact that you've got a little bit of everything. I mean, the only other place I've lived for any length of time was Liverpool, and I absolutely adore Liverpool. It's my favourite city, and I love to live in there. But it's hard to escape when you live in a city. You can be anonymous, but you're surrounded by stuff all the time. Whereas on the Isle of Man, it's really, I live in Port St Mary's, so it's pretty easy to just walk 500 yards and you're in the hills or on the beach.
Yeah.
And I love that aspect of living on the Isle of Man. There's still quiet places on the island, but equally you can go 500 yards in the other direction and there's some sort of action, so there's things to do.
Meet 6 people,
Yeah, absolutely. Everywhere you go, you meet people and I love that. I love being surrounded by people and kind of all your lives intermingling. I kind of like that. I'm quite a shy person, but I wouldn't call myself a private person. I kind of have quite a big social group. And I like that aspect of living on the Isle of Man. I suppose you could have that anywhere, but that's part of what I like about living on the Isle of Man.
Well, that's the question. Yeah, great. And what would you say the main challenges now that the Isle of Man faces?
Ooh, right. I don't want to get political.
I don't want you to either.
No. So I'd say, apart from, without being political, I think there is a problem with an ageing population. I think young people are leaving because it's too expensive to live here. And I think that is a real and present problem. I think the Isle of Man is not prepared for AI. I think AI is going to change a lot, and I don't think we're ready for it.
Well, you can already see that in the technology part of, if you're like in your 80s, you're already, aren't you?
Yeah.
Kind of disadvantaged from everything, like accessing your bank account to...
Yes. Life is going to get increasingly complicated, and jobs are going to be lost to AI, and I don't think we're in a good position at the moment in terms of being prepared for that. So I think the biggest problem the Isle of Man's going to face is an ageing population and a technological, what's the word I'm looking for? A large change.
Disruption,
yeah. Life is going to, I believe life is going to really change over the next 3-5 years, medium term. And
did you see the movie Leave It All Behind?
Yes. Yeah.
That was terrifying.
Yeah. I think the science fiction is going to become very real quite quickly.
Yeah. It was a bit too close for comfort, that. Yeah.
I hope it doesn't change life on the Isle of Man in terms of... it's going to change everywhere. So I guess, everywhere's going to change. Maybe the Isle of Man will just change relative to everywhere else. It'll still be a great place compared to lots of other places.
Yeah. Focus on growing your own food.
Yeah, absolutely. And nurturing your community.
Yes.
Don't try and do it on your own. No. Nurture a nice community.
Okay. What have you got planned next for here? What's any big exciting projects coming up? Or
I'm working with loads of people as ever. I've generally got, I don't know, on average about 30 or 40 projects on the go at any one time. So those skills in project management that I learned in my old job are handy. They're useful. So I'm grateful to my old job for that. I'm very happy doing what I do, and I'm not really trying to change it much. I'm always trying to get better at what I do. I'm kind of preparing for what's coming with AI, in terms of what I'll have to offer as a service.
Yeah, sure.
And I'm recognising it's going to change a little. It's changed over the last 10 or 12 years. It's always changing, and I'm always looking for patterns and looking for, like, why are people coming to the studio now compared to why they came 10 years ago.
It's interesting, yeah.
So I'm kind of, that steers me, you know, in terms of what...
Well, I can't think of many people as well equipped as you to be able to cope with that, with your computer science degree and, you know, the whole kind of setup you have here, but, you know, understanding how that could impact on, I don't know, remote recording or something, I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like when COVID happened, you know, the world went a lot more remote, you know. I mean, the idea of having, I mean, Zoom meetings were a very businessy thing. They weren't really something that normal people outside of business did.
Well,
you know,
but believe me, people in business, like normal business, it was quite a step up as well.
So that kind of changed, and remote working became more common. And while COVID was happening, I was having to really navigate those seas about how to work remotely and how to record remotely, how to, like, get jobs from people, you know, on the other side of the world, where they would send you their music and you would mix it and send it back to them. And I still do a bit of that. I do a lot of it locally. You know, a lot of people during that period set up like home studios, where they were able to do some part of the process at home.
Yeah.
So most people don't come to me now with a completely vanilla project. It's like they've already done some work on the project, and then I'm able to offer my skills to that to make it better, hopefully. So yeah, that whole remote working is a bigger part of what I do than it was 10 years ago, definitely. And I expect that to increase.
Yeah.
You know,
okay.
It's easier for people to make music at home, but it's not necessarily easier for them to know what music to make and what to do with it and how to make it sound really good.
Yeah.
So that's kind of becoming more of my job, the production role rather than the engineering role.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, sounds good. Well, so here's a few fun questions just to finish off. Books, or you mentioned a podcast that you listen to, but anything else that you've listened to that gives you inspiration or self-development, recommendations, something like that? Or just a good read? I don't know.
The books I read tend to be music biographies. I am pretty obsessed with music, to be fair.
Yeah,
you know,
it's a passion, isn't it?
There's a pattern. So I read lots of music biographies, and I really enjoy them, I find. And they can be about anyone. Bands I love, bands I've got no interest in. I just find people who do creative stuff interesting, and the reasons for doing it and the journey it takes them on. So they're the kind of books I read, and manuals,
right?
You know, because I'm a bit of a techie geek.
Yeah.
So I read a lot of manuals. Film, I like independent cinema. I like music documentaries, obviously. I like the odd blockbuster as well. Yeah,
3 favourite movies? You know. Think of them offhand? Not Leave the World Behind, obviously. That's
my partner,
not a favourite.
I'm going to say Jesus Christ Superstar, the 1972 version. Gosh. I'm not a religious person.
Great music, though.
It's got a great soundtrack, and it's a great film. It's a good story, you know. And I do love watching that film. We watch it every year, and I love it. So that's comes to mind. 24-Hour Party People, the story of Factory Records, is one of my favourite music films. I absolutely adore that. It's brilliant. It's funny, and it tells a wonderful story of Factory Records, who, you know, were about as chaotic as I was in my early days. You know, just I love the way their approach was brilliant, and that film tells the story really well.
Favourite quote? Have you got a favourite quote?
Favourite quote? The quote I live by, or the quote mantra, whatever you'd like to call it, is, ask not why this is happening to me, but what it's trying to teach me. And I could explain that in more detail, or I could just leave it hanging there.
Go on, explain it.
I worry a lot. I'm a bit of a worrier. I don't suffer from anxiety. I wouldn't say I suffer from anxiety, because I know people who do, and I don't have it as bad as they have it. But I do get quite anxious about the world in general, and I tend to get anxious about the big stuff rather than the small stuff. So I have to find ways to manage that, and I do worry a lot. And that saying, I can apply it to all kinds of situations. So if something's happening in your life and it's hard for whatever reason, and you have that maybe you have that feeling that it's unfair or that life isn't fair or why is life tough, why is life hard, is if you can turn it around and just say, well, what's it trying to teach me? So if food prices are going up and you're going, I'm not going to be able to afford to eat, what's that trying to teach you? Well, it's trying to teach you to maybe learn more about your diet, learn more about where to get the most benefit from foods, where to go and get those foods, or what you can grow yourself. It's like how you can use a problem to turn it into a practical action.
I like that. I really like that. I'm glad you explained that.
It can be applied to all sorts of situations. Anything in your life where you think that's not quite going how I want it to go. It's like, rather than just expecting it to change by hope and will and luck alone, it's like, what can it teach you? What's that bad thing that's happening trying to tell me? And it's like, so very real and present for me at the moment is AI. And I could go, why is this happening? Why is it taking over every aspect of my job? Why is it potentially going to change all of society? But rather than worry about that, which I do, and try not to, but I do, it's like, what's it trying to teach me? Well, what it's trying to teach me is to be aware of it, to prepare for it, to understand it, and try and bypass the worst effects of it. So that's how I can turn it into an action, which then stops me concentrating on worrying about it and turns it into an action that you can actually do something about.
Brilliant. That's excellent. Thank you. That's a wonderful note to end on, actually. I mean, aside from what we'll do is we'll put all the links to how to find you.
Okay.
You've got a wonderful website and you're on socials. Which ones?
Yeah, I'm on Facebook, really. I am on Instagram, but I'm woeful at updating Instagram.
Doesn't it automatically do it if you put a post on Facebook? I don't know.
You can. Yeah. I just don't hang out on Instagram like I should, really, because I think that's where
TikTok, apparently.
TikTok, I'm way too long in the tooth for that.
Yeah, I haven't gone there yet either.
No, so Facebook is kind of where I post most of my stuff.
Yeah, it is. Brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Gyp. What a wonderful experience meeting you today, coming down here, and thank you so much for helping in the project.
Well, thank you very much indeed for your interest. It's most enjoyable.
Thanks for listening this far. I hope you found this episode to be valuable. If so, I'd like to ask you for a small favour. Would you please go to Apple Podcasts and leave a 5-star review, because that's one of the best ways for others to find the series, and please send a link to the podcast to 3 friends or colleagues who know they'll find it helpful. That way we can spread the word about how great a place the Isle of Man is to live and work, and help spread some positivity. Thanks again for tuning in and being part of our great community. I'll see you next time. Island Influencers is a fortnightly podcast. Make sure you don't miss the next episode by clicking the follow button on your podcast platform. A big thanks to the producer Catherine Watts from Social Cues and editor Martin Bamford at Bear Content, and thank you for listening.